Hi everyone, thanks for checking out another InfoSec Hub video. I tweaked the settings of this video a little bit, so I hope the quality will be better, audio will be fine. That being said, let's dive into this. I find this great image about the anatomy of cybersecurity. So if you compare cybersecurity with human, all the systems that we have on board and compare it to IT, then there are some similarities there. So let's start with the brain. And the brain is in this image the same as a SOC, which stands for Security Operations Center. This is the brain. It controls all the functions, all the decisions similar to the brain. And the brain is fed by the eyes and ears. The eyes and ears is the SIEM, in other words, the Security Incident and Event Management. This is, I will do another separate video on the SIEM because this is really important. But the SIEM basically collects logging from all endpoints, servers, the network, the firewall, the cloud, everything that you can put the temperature meter in and see what's going on and where data is flowing through, and data is being stored, retrieved, sent back and forth, and that can be attacked in some form or fashion, needs to have its eyes and ears open, and that's the SIEM. And the SIEM is basically where the Security Operations Center is interacting with. Because it's no way, if you have, let's say, 1,000 servers, that you have an idea what's going on. You can check the network level, you can check the server level, so OS level basis. You can even go deeper, database level. But you need to have eyes and ears everywhere, and it all comes together in the Security Operations Center. SIEM is very important, and the SOC is actually that interacts with the SIEM and that can make decisions based on the information that the SIEM collects. So the SIEM is very important for the SOC to be able to do its job, and that's why I make a separate video on the SIEM system, the next video. So the eyes and ears, very important. What's going on? What do I hear? Is there any noise? Is there any suspicious activity going on? You want to know that. Data encryption in this figure is the same as the heart, so it ensures the transmission of storage of information. And well, the blood is basically the data. I understand where it comes from. I don't think it's as strong as the SOC compared to the brain, and the SIEM as the eyes and ears, but I understand where it comes from. Data encryption is very important, both in transit and at rest. There should not be any plain text being sent over a communications line, the network or the internet, because it can be sniffed, it can be spoofed, and then basically you're lost. So data encryption is very important, and that's the heart of everything. Intrusion detection is the same as a nervous system. It detects intrusions and transmits signals for quick response, like monitoring for suspicious activity. So let's say, for instance, a port scan is performed on a system, and then the potential attacker gets back that port 21 is open, or port 80, or port 443, or 444 for that matter. Then this is suspicious. A port scan happens every minute on every system. Even if you're watching this now, your router or computer or whatever you have, a port scan will be performed, especially for systems that are accessible over the internet. And your first gateway, so to speak, is your router. Whatever is a computer or it's just a box, but port scans are performed there. You can set a trigger for that, but then you get lots and lots of triggers. To a certain degree, otherwise you wouldn't be watching these videos, what kind of ports you have open, and you can have specific looking out for those ports. But if it's really regular, like a web interface port, like port 80, or you have an FTP server running, then you might really focus on port 21 and port 22, for instance. But the port scan is the first step. If then the attacker gets back, this port is open, they will use certain tools just for this port, and from that moment your intrusion detection system should pick it up, where the IP is coming from, what he's trying to do. And if he, for instance, tries something 3 times, he should be blocked for 15 minutes. And then if after half an hour he tries again, now this is suspicious. Because you have to look for, is this automated or is this a human behind it? And there's a difference between it. There are lots of automated tools that the attacker can run and he gets results back, and that's the next step. Then he say, okay, at this location this port is open because you have a weak security configuration, and now we try to take it to the next level, and that's actually when you should get notified of it, and that's what an intrusion detection system can do. Intrusion prevention system is a little bit different. This is actually when it detects the system is under attack, then the prevention system should, for instance, close this port down and block this IP address and various other methods to make sure that the connection between the attacker and the target system is closed off. That's nothing short, but I can go on and ramble on for hours, but I think you get the point. Infrastructure is the same as the bones, so the infrastructure can be a server, can be a physical line, like a UTP cable, basically, where the data is transferred from one point to the other. It can be a router, it can be a switch. That's the whole infrastructure on which your data goes from point A to B, bones. Security policies is just like the liver. Okay, you can have a firewall, but you can allow any, right? So then you basically don't need a firewall, because if any traffic goes in, can flow to any traffic to the internal network, then you might as well not have a firewall. So we need security policies, not only written, but also security policies within those systems. So let's say, for instance, we block all ports except port 80 and the HTTPS port. I believe that's, 4.3 out of my head? I think so. But let's say, for instance, you only use the web and you have a FTP server on your internal network. Then there's only a few ports that you can use and that you need to utilize, and I should close the rest. So you cannot set up a remote desktop. You cannot set up an SSH tunnel, because all of that are potential threats. You want to minimize the attack vector, so to speak. So you need security policies within your firewall. You need security policies within your IDS, IPS. Without security policies is basically a free-for-all. You need to set policies. Filtering system. Filtering sensitive information to prevent unauthorized access. A filtering system could also mean a nice IAM solution, identity and access management. So you have role-based access. When you have a certain function, then these access rights belong to you. When you have this function, these access rights belong to you, and you cannot access those kind of systems because it has nothing to do with your job function. We do the privileged of the least privileged, so you only get rights to systems and data that you need for your job. That is, that's the best approach, basically, and also you need to make sure that you have these policies in place that there cannot be no data exfiltration. Let's say if you work with sensitive data, make sure you have the cloud to Microsoft, to Google closed off, that you use your own cloud, because you don't want these things end up in the mailbox or something like that. You really need to think, in what ways can I get information out of this system onto the internet, onto a third party, and then it leaves the network, and that's something you don't want. You can also set policies for that, but filtering is also very important within applications, on the network, on various points where the data flows. Speaking about data flow, blood, transport vital information through the network. Well, that's the lifeblood. Without blood, the whole system cannot work, and that's data, the data flow. The immune system, antivirus, that's a kind of a no-brainer. It detects and eliminates harmful infections. It detects, so if it detects a virus on an endpoint, it will put it in quarantine. It tries to make sure that it can't affect the rest of the system. And usually it's just let's say 1,000 lines of code, it will be removed and it will be taken away from the system, will be deleted, so it's no longer a threat. And then the last part here, the firewall, can be compared to the skin. It acts as the first line of defense against external threats. Yeah, we just talked about it. It's basically the WAN is the Internet Wide Area Network, LAN, Local Area Network, and in between sits the firewall. So you got data coming in from the Internet to the local area network, and you got data from the local area network going on to the Internet. And it sits in between, and it's basically the first line defense. So you have the firewall. Behind that, you have your router set up. Maybe you have the network basically on that level of the OSI model. And it all starts with the data, and data is transported over the network. If you set your policies right, then this piece of data need to go to this system, and it's legitimate data because it flows through the right port, then is redirected to the right server. But if you, for instance, have an internal FTP server and which should not be accessible from the internet, you can do a port scan. It will not show up. That way the attacker does not know you have an internal FTP server, and you can mitigate it from that. So it's all about what gets connection to what. Firewall can set that up because it's at the network level. I hope I explained it right. If you think I made a mistake here and there, please correct me. But this is what I know so far. And I like this figure a lot because it explains a lot about what's going on. And I'm learning a lot about SIEM solutions at the moment. So I will make my next video about a SIEM system, because this is really the eyes and ears, and it collects data from all data points. So endpoints, laptops, servers, the network, the firewall, the IPS, the IDS, everything. So, and it congests it into one thing, and it will pop up if something happens on this server, something is happening on the firewall, and you have immediate response, and you can close down services. You can, you have the insights, the eyes and ears to spot an attack and then act accordingly. That's basically what it is. Hope you find this video interesting. I really like to make information security concept videos. I hope you appreciate that. If you want a certain concept explained, then I'll try my best. Hopefully I got the knowledge about it, and otherwise I look it up. I'm really into InfoSec, as you can tell. I find it fascinating. And yeah, hope to see you in the next video, and I hope you're doing great today. Thanks for watching.